this second portion of the interview, we take Michael through an algorithm test. And so this is a pretty simple algorithm that you could solve in a lot of different ways. And I was interested just to see his approach and see how he solved it and get an understanding of how his brain works. And so one of the things, there's a lot of things somebody could be looking at in a technical interview, but for me, I'm looking at how quickly he can solve it, if he can solve it, and if he can't solve it, how is his brain kind of working, and where did he kind of fall short? And in some cases, you could not solve it, but really showcase an understanding and, still pass the interview. But of course, if you can solve it, that's great. And then allow the interviewer to come back with a couple of follow-ups. For example, hey, what are ways we can do this a little bit faster? Or maybe talk about, space complexity. How can we do this without taking up as much memory? Those kind of things. And then really tune it. One of the things that I like seeing, and Michael's really good at this, is kind of clarity of thought and being really well organized as well. Because if they're kind of all scatterbrained and they're just in and out, even if they do solve it, but they do it in a very kind of convoluted way, or it's really confused, that's not great either. So you're kind of looking for really short and sweet, really getting to the heart of it, showcasing your knowledge of the language and being able to move around the IDE are all really good things. And so, yeah, hopefully this is interesting and valuable to you. And enjoy this part of the interview.
So if you want to go ahead and share your screen, pull up VS Code or whatever your IDE of choice is, and I'll maybe walk you through what the problem is.
Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, coming through good. I like your theme.
All right, thank you. I forgot what the theme is, but I love dark mode all day.
That's great. This is great. Okay, so I'll kind of walk you through this verbally, and then we can kind of, you and I could kind of, we'll see if it makes sense to you. So the idea is, I kind of have this little storyline here where you're trying to take down a network of criminals, those kind of things. But basically, you're given a string of zeros and ones. We'll call it binary. And what you want to do is you want to replace the longest series of zeros or subset of zeros with these hashes. So you can kind of see there, like the digit, the third, fourth, and fifth digit, I replace with 3 hashes there, because that's the longest subset of zeros in there. Because and there will always be, and that's kind of one of those caveats, there will always be a longest subset. So there won't ever be like a tie, of like a bunch of 3s or something like that. What you want to do is create a function that can kind of take in a string and will return a string, and you just modify it in that way I mentioned there, where you take out the longest string there. So does that kind of make sense, what I'm getting at there?
Mm-hmm. I think the goal right now that I'm hearing is find the longest string and convert those zeros into hashtags.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, exactly. The longest subset of the digits, zero digits there, and convert them. Otherwise, leave everything else the same.
Let's see. Can I ask a few questions before we get started?
Let's do it.
All right. For this, is it okay to use, or are we focusing on time or space when it comes to this type of challenge?
At this point, let's just kind of focus it on readability. And once we kind of get it working, I might kind of poke at one of those metrics.
I like that. That makes me feel comfortable with this challenge.
Yeah, exactly. We won't dive too deep into that at this point.
I'm thinking of playing with 2 for loops when it comes to this overall challenge. But let's see if that's going to play out. All right. Are we starting now by any chance?
Yeah, let me go ahead and set my timer. And this isn't to time you, it's to time me, because I will go longer than you're probably interested in going. So let me go ahead and set my timer. I've got my timer going, like 20-ish minutes. And that's not a ton of time. So it's one of those, like, I don't necessarily expect you to like finish this with time to spare or anything like that. If you get it done, it's awesome. If not, that's fine. We can still talk about it. So no pressure either way. So just as long as whenever you're going through this, just kind of verbalize what you're thinking out loud so I can kind of track your thinking. So it's like in school you can get credit for the effort.
Hey, Spanish classes.
Exactly. So yeah, let's dive into it.
So just for the beginning steps that I like to do when it comes to any challenges like this, I always like to break down the the material, just to figure out what I literally understand and don't understand here. So I know that this is definitely the input that I'm going for, and then the output I'm expecting to get. And what can I say about this? This is going to be called like an FN. Find. Okay. Yeah, find longest subset works out for me. So that's kind of like what I'm looking into, and think about this. If I was to just break it down even more, I know the first one is kind of like a little goal here. If I see this happening, I'm just breaking down the zeros just to kind of get an estimate of what I would be for looping into, because the goal that I want to for loop into now, so I'm just going to do some notes, is I want to go through the string, loop through the string, and let's call it, yeah, str. And the first thing I want to target is the first one and the second one. Actually, yeah, so let's go type in the first one. And I'm going to do the same thing for kind of like another step here. First one, second one. And if I'm going through the first one, I'm trying to think about, I'm going to take a step back out of this for a minute. So something that I'm trying to think about when it comes to this challenge is I just want to know where my starting point is when it comes to targeting the one, just to help determine some type of length that I'm starting and ending. And once I reach the second one, that's also another starting point for this for the second zero, or the second longest check. So the first checkpoint being 1001, and then it goes to the next one to double check if that's longer. So I need a counter, that's definitely a thing. I'm gonna write counter, and from there I have another thought that I kind of want to play with, is kind of want to make an object of something, and every time I'm adding into this object, I want to set the key just to every index, so which is kind of, let's say for this example, 1, 2, 3, 4. 15, so I'm gonna go from 0 through 15, and that's, not sure how this is gonna play out, but for the value now, I want to think about a countdown. So, all right, gonna go a little more backwards for a minute and start thinking about, I have a counter, but I'm also wanting to look into converting the areas that needs to be updated. Okay, so that's what I want my keys to be doing. Okay, perfect. The goal is to convert index value from 0 to a hashtag EDG, and I'm going for 0, 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's do I3 through 4, 5, I5, and that's gonna equal to, or actually no, something like that. Okay, just cleaning up some stuff. All right. From here, what I'm focusing on is I have a counter to first tally up how many, just to determine the length of something. I have an object right now, which I might just call it just object or converter. And from there, I have my parameter string, and I'm looping through it for my first one, and I'm looping through my second one, and checking the counter now. All right, increment counter. So between the ones, and at the same time, I want to check how many zeros there are between the ones, and I'm checking how many zeros between the ones, and from there, every 0 I want to increment counter between the ones and zeros. So that's already self-explanatory. All right, every time I'm checking that, the thing that I want to check on is the space. No, I want to check the first example of 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, and then I want to check the second example of how many ones there are. So this might be using the counter. No, I won't be using this converter. I want to use something else. All right, let's see what I can think of here. Might use an array in this example. How are we calling it? Record. So in my record, what I want to record is the length. Of each subset. Okay, cool. So right now in my head, I have something that's kind of like a counter, a converter, and a recorder. The counter just going to be counting up to something. The recorder just collecting each subset that I'll be collecting, and the converter would be once I'm ready to know which one is the longest subset, I want to convert that index value, that index. Yeah, there we go. That makes sense now. So if that's true, I'll be adding key from ... I want to go for key of index. Of the string index. Yeah. That feels fitting for me right now. Justin, can I ask you what the time is right now for my countdown?
You are halfway through. So if you want to take this, and I think you definitely have a approach that could work here. we'll see how far we get. But if you want to stick it in some JS and let's see, I think this looks. I think this is good. I mean, I looking at this, I feel like there's definitely something that could work here.
Hell yeah. There's also a good chance I might be overthinking, but you know what? Let's find out. We can simplify
You
what
would
I
be the
thought.
first or last engineer to over-engineer.
Let's go. All right. So kind of like what I created here. Find longest subset. And from there, I'm just going to create some. I think I can do something like this. There we go.
Fancy with this hotkeys.
Constant. Go for that. Oops. For now, they're just putting strings just so I don't get any errors, and I want to go for 0 object and array. Put some quick notes here. Collect subset. And then the last one is save and update val. Okay, cool. So that's what I'm going for. And then for my return, what is it? My return is going to be a string. So I'm just going to keep it as string for now. Or possibly just use the string. Do that later. Keep it as this for now. All right, cool. So if I understand this correctly, and I'm just trying to walk through again, my first goal is I want to be looping through the string of the binary numbers I'll be getting. And the second step that I'll like to be doing is converting the longest subset of zeros that's between the ones. And actually, if you can help confirm with this, Justin, is that the right goal right now? Just I'm gonna say it one more time so I understand what I'm thinking. I'm just trying to find the longest subset of zeros, and that's between the ones. Is that accurate, or am I going too deep?
Exactly. Find the longest subset and replace them with the hashes.
Okay. That actually gave me an idea. So if I'm gonna go with that, switch it up a little bit. Okay. Alright, so my for loop is starting out as just going through the whole thing. The question I'm trying to face with is, let's go grab something right away. So I have a visual example side by side. Alright, so those are my starting points from 0, 0, 1, and I know there's a next 0 that I want to go for. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so 0, 0, until I meet the first one. Yeah, that's a smart point right there. Okay, got an idea. So what I would like to do is update my counter for one thing. Let's do a plus equals 1, updating counter. From there, I need to update my counter as let now. Cool. So counter plus 1, because it's going to be updating the length. And also I want to do an if condition just to throw it out there. If binary equals 1, then we gotta figure out what I do next. Cut, that's what I want to do. I want to cut something. So from 1, I also need to consider something else. I want to just throw out my if conditions that I just want to think out loud right now. I also want to figure out the one and the second one. Okay. I want to. Kind of got myself lost in this moment, but if I take a breather for a minute, I think I can make sense of something here. Collect. I'm just going to start with the first one. I want to just check. So so if I go here, so once I hit that, I'm gonna get, there we go. I'm gonna start with 2 as my starting point. So my counter is gonna go all the way up to 2 because of the zeros. And once I hit the 1, I'm moving towards the next. Okay, there we go. So I want to actually update this. If it's not 1, then update my counter. And once I do hit the 1, else, there we go. I can do something like that. Else, I'm skipping. I want to check something else now. Counter, recorder. Recorder sounds fitting for something here. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's do that. Recorder.push, and I want to throw out my counter here, and I want to reset my counter. There we go. There's something else I was thinking about. Maybe I would like to just compare my current counter with something previous. That's a different condition though. Okay. Counter equals 0 again for a reset. And now I can add another condition here. Okay, cool. So just from here, what I'll be doing is updating my counter, and then the next batch of it is definitely going to be a 3. So then the next batch would be a 2 and a 0, but that doesn't matter. Else, I push my counter there and I reset my 0, and now I want to compare my previous recorder item and my current recorder item. But just so I have some inclination of what's going on, I kind of want to console log all of this. So I forgot to ask you if that's okay with you. Can I console log just to test out what I currently have? All right. All right, cool. So from here, what I'm testing out is the counter, mainly the recorder actually. Right. I think that's all I need. And if I were to do this output, we're expecting for this to go. And all right, so this is what I'm going for, and that's the output that I'm trying to achieve here. Let's go open up the terminal. I was doing a quick test. I think something may not be working in my terminal, but we'll find out. There we go. Okay, cool. So I know something is working here, and I'm missing something.
Well, I am. I got to stop you right there.
That's
We're
fair.
at time. We're at time. and we'll do a quick little debrief, but I just want to say congrats on getting through both of those. Those are really tough, just getting there, showing up. Yeah, I'll see you on the other side, but congrats on getting through it. So you survived.
Justin.
All right, thank you, man. I'll see you soon.
Welcome to the debrief. You've left the building. How'd you think it went?
I'll be honest, starting from the end of it and to the beginning, I kind of got that, got a little rusty at the end or the midway. You know what? That's how it started. Didn't do some mock interviews yet, so I like that practice of getting into the logic mindset. Fortunately, didn't finish anything, but I felt proud that I got something out the way, seeing what I know.
Yeah.
And then going into the behavioral interview, so to speak, I like that. It was easy. I felt comfortable with all the thoughts that came out. I really just latched onto a project and kind of brought all of those situations that I've encountered, like for use effect or class stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that really works in your favor is for junior mid, there's definitely like lower expectations as far as like having like the nitty gritty of like how the mechanics work and those kind of things, and even like for the algorithm side of like, hey, I'm just gonna boom knock it out. And you definitely showed that you've worked on real things, and I think that kind of showed through how conversational you were, and you were able to pull from real world examples, those kind of things. So let's talk about what you want to talk about, strengths or weaknesses. Okay. What do you want to? Let's start with the bat. Okay, so and again, I'm going to, obviously you're not applying for a staff position or anything like that, but I will kind of give you some pointers that could help move you in that direction, just as far as like things that I would look for those mid and senior. You got you ready to go. You got the pen and paper. So I think some of the things, these are all easy wins. These are all easy to correct, easy to kind of overcome. It's just spend a little bit more time in the React docs and then just know the exact word for things and the exact reason for things. It just gives you like so much more, just that extra push. Because I think you've used stuff, and I think you're functional, and you can get in there and get the job done. Like I don't worry if I gave you a ticket that you could get the job done. That was just my intuition. But there definitely is a sense of like, hey, talking actual specifics of like the ins and outs of like not just a use case, but like the exact 3 reasons why you would do something. And because sometimes there is like in the docs, there'll be like boom, boom, boom. Here's why. Yeah. And so those are easy things to overcome by just kind of like, especially with the new React website, just getting super familiar, just revisiting those and just reading through it. Even if you're like, I know there's 80%, that extra 20% might come up. But again, I don't think that was like I would probably say, maybe B- on that kind of thing. Cause again, this is a junior mid. And so I was like, okay, this guy's been around, and I've definitely interviewed people who weren't at least conversational, about those things, but I think that's easy to overcome. I definitely feel like, there was a sense of like you knew the words, but maybe not the combination of the words. Like you knew, you were familiar with the topic, and but it's like somebody who's maybe watched the news about it for a couple days, so they're kind of conversational. But like if you're in a room full of people who do it like nonstop, their brains are going to be a little bit finely tuned, and so they'll pick up on those things. But like again, I don't think that's like a showstopper or anything like that. There are like very like testing's one of those that some people really all about testing. They'll bring it up. It'll be a favorite topic. I'm not that way. But some people would want you to know like what's a unit test, what's an acceptance test, what's an integration test, what's end to end, is that the same as integration, those kind of things, and being able to like say specifically, and like, okay, what is a paradigm of a really well written test, and those kind of things, and like, have you used Cypress? What do you think about Cypress? And so I'm not necessarily that way, but there are people who, just a quick overview of that might really win you a lot of brownie points, because if they are huge about testing, and because most people, even if they're not great at testing, they like to like enforce their theories about testing in interviews, because they like to like really preach testing, even if they don't do it themselves. And that comes out in interviews. So that's an easy thing to win. And like TDD and those things. And anyway, testing is just like its own cloud of things that you could just easily familiarize yourself, be topical, and conversational. And I think you'll be good to go on that. That's not a showstopper or anything like that, but that did come up. The algorithm side, and I'll show you a solution I have here in a little bit. But I think you definitely, I'm trying to, I keep going good and bad back and forth, but I'll stay with just the negative. I definitely feel like it was like maybe a little over engineered. Definitely you're kind of thinking of like a larger solution. Like if I was building out a class that would support doing this 1,000 different ways, then I think your approach was spot on. Like it definitely felt very, maybe not object oriented, but like definitely felt like you're building a utility that has long-term functionality. And what we really, we just need to kind of just solve it. And so this could be one of those that I think that's an area for improvement. There's definitely like a lot of string manipulation methods that are like easily available that you maybe could have used, even if it's like, hey, I know this isn't performant, I know this isn't whatever, but I'm just trying to like give you something and I'll iterate. And so things like split, being able to split on stuff is a pretty intuitive like thing of like, I'm going to split on ones, or I'm going to do something, and there's or hey, I'm dot replace, those kind of things that are like, oh, this already exists. And even if you don't use it, just kind of showing that you know that it exists. And it's, I think, in general, a flow that I find myself doing, for better or worse. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it's generally, hey, if there's a built-in for it, do it, because it may not necessarily be the most performant, but it's like easier to read. And then if they say, hey, I want it to be more performant, then you say, okay, let me actually take a look at this method. And if it's like sometimes like a dot filter is looping through things in a really inefficient way, maybe I'll create my own version of it. But start with the built-in, especially for junior and mid. The expectation is the question. A lot of these are kind of framed around like, do you know the built-ins? This one wasn't necessarily, but like it's a way to showcase if you are familiar with it. There is, just a couple of like little things, and I think you would have caught this is like in the loop you were kind of just saying checking if it's 0. But you're comparing it against the actual digit 0 versus the number 0 versus the string 0. And so it's one of those things you would have caught it, but it was one of those I was like, okay, like your brain didn't naturally see it. It was one of those that like you would have caught it. And so it's not like it's one of those that's like, your brain was solving the problem. So that wasn't really, it was just something I noticed. And I think, let's see here. Yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of at a high level, kind of what the thing is. I think this is a good transition, because I think this is a weakness, but it was sort of a strength, is kind of your ability to break things down. I think that's like, I'll talk about the weakness side of it because we're kind of at the tail end of that, but it quickly converts into a strength. But the weakness side of it is, because I've used this, is it can be kind of perceived as a stall tactic if you kind of break things down a little too much, because then people are like, oh, he knows there's a time limit, and if he spends 18 minutes on this, then he's only got 2 minutes to write code, and then he's like off the hook. And it's usually easier to logically think through things and mark down than it is to actually write the code. And so I think your approach was like, here's the upside of it though, is you're very so articulate and conversational, and you're able to break things down and think clearly. Like if you were to put that in a Confluence or a Jira ticket, I feel like I understand what you're trying to do, and your ability to communicate is really great. So I think that's like superb. But I think one of the things you could try and do is say, okay, I'm going to bottleneck it to 2 minutes, 3 minutes to just say, make sure I understand the scope of the problem. And I think some of that could just come down to questions like, hey, like what kind of inputs am I getting? Is it going to be empty string? What if it's all zeros? Like what do I do in these edge cases? And just kind of articulate the edge cases and ask them. And it's fair game. And that is a case to where you're just talking, but you're getting brownie points. You're not necessarily writing code, getting brownie points. And so that's an easy thing you could do to just kind of level up. If you're going to ask questions, make it very germane. And if you do pseudocode, you could kind of leave out types. You could kind of just like blah, blah, blah. Because what I'm more interested in seeing is like how quickly your brain gets to the solution and then comes back with a quick solution. And while you're doing that quick solution, your brain's going out finding a more optimum solution simultaneously. And so if you haven't come back the first time, I'm like, okay, we're definitely not going to get to the optimum solution. So I think that's one of those like quicker iterations I think is good. But seeing the solution that you're kind of going for, it warranted, if to actually achieve that solution, it would have required more thought. So I think that's just kind of how you try to solve it. Kind of already mentioned some good things is, like I said, how well thought out everything was. I thought when you did switch it over to code, like your clarity of thinking was through the roof. Your ability to use IDE is like clearly you write code a lot. I felt really good. Again, I don't think there'd be any concern of like, if you need to solve a ticket, you could solve the ticket. There's definitely not that. It's just more like, okay, well, he's probably doesn't spend a ton of time writing algorithms. Like imagine who does, And so, and at this point in anybody's career, it's not like most people's pastime. So yeah, there's just I think I was very impressed by that. Like I said, communication was really great, very organized, clear, like what you wanted to do, how you wanted to do it was really good. And I think the question you asked about time and space complexity are like everybody's favorite. Like this is just a good question to ask because it feels really good. But kind of looking back, I'm like, what if I had said optimize for speed or time, or space or time? That's like, okay, I would have been curious how that would have shaped your answer, not knowing. But in general, definitely for junior and mids, I'm not going to be like, okay, space, time, that's like a follow-up. It's like, wow, you solved it in like 10 minutes. Wow. How can we make this better? And that's like where you can pseudocode out ways to optimize for those. But I thought that was really good. And I think I've already mentioned a bunch of like other positive things. But what are your thoughts on that? And what do you think, based on what I said, does that kind of line up with what you were thinking?
Yeah, just first off, I appreciate your feedback. Not everyone breaks down that feedback for anything. Helps really make you figure out what I recognize and what I don't recognize. So thanks for that first off. And then going into, I'm gonna be honest with you with like my first thoughts when it came to the challenge and what I know about myself that I haven't worked on, but I would like to work on. And one of them that you pointed off was, I have a good skill set that you've been highlighting a lot, and I appreciate that. The challenge is I'm more long-term thinker when it comes to solutions, which is not the best thing when it comes to a short-term solution-based mindset. Meaning, if I were to just break it down, like it's MVP first or scale it first, which one comes first? And I lean in that problem-oriented mindset, which could be cool for project-based stuff, but not good for like just interview stuff. Just quick off the cuff kind of mentality. So I like to work on that. That's one thing I like that you pointed out. The second one that was something that I never thought into words, but you pointed out was bottlenecking. Is that the right word?
Yeah. I think
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. I just realized something that I sometimes forget to do in pressure moments. It's like, why not throw out at least a time for myself so then I can at least have like a marker, like a mental marker. And if I don't reach that mark, then I go to plan B versus sticking with mark A without realizing I'm still in mark A, so to speak. That was a time management in terms of like just for interview purposes. That was something that's helpful. And what is it? Kind of with that notion, it's like the idea of be open to edge case testing. I feel like I'm really comfortable with articulating and conversating my thoughts nowadays. But the thing that I recognize that plays out a good part, you highlighted too, was why not just test out console logs? I've only heard stories about not doing that not being a good idea. But you know what? If it's an interview and I'm trying to go for a job here, let's see if I can articulate my testing and results kind of skill sets too during that interview process. Those were two things that kind of stood out to me for the feedback that, hey, now I'm learning now.
Yeah. And this is the feedback loop, and now you've kind of like, okay, now I know some gaps. it's so much easier because like the actual gaps are like really easy if you know where they are and you can just pinpoint them, which work on them. And I think reps with algorithms is one of those things that I think it definitely is a, it's like, it's in no way a reflection of your ability to write production level code, but it will make you enjoy and appreciate writing code more because you can think about things a little bit in a slightly different way. And it just exposes you to, just like, do you need to know Java to write JavaScript? No. But if you knew Java, it might give you a different way of thinking about how you write JavaScript. So let me show you, again, this is a solution I did in like 5 minutes. So anyone who's watching this later who's like, hey, wait a second, it could be done 10 times better. But this is, I kind of did it under similar situations of like, okay, let me just pump it out. And so let me share my screen and I can kind of walk you through a solution for it. Again, it's not pretty, but I'm not going to give you like I spent 10 months on this solution. That's not fair. Apples to apples. But just to kind of give you how I think about these things. Let's see. The way I kind of approach this, and this is like mostly comments here, but you can kind of follow the logic here, which is finding what the longest is, just in a numeric sense, where it starts, like in terms of an index, and then what kind of count I'm on, because you could as you're trying to find the longest count, you have to keep a sense of what count am I on. And then I just kind of go through the whole thing once, and this is just another way of doing what you were doing there, which is just getting the index, just looping through the whole thing and getting the digit. You did the same thing. I think you called it binary, but same thing. And then this, again, you were on track doing a lot of this stuff anyway, but if it's a 0, I increase the current count because I just want to see, just see how, kind of get a sense of how many zeros there are. And if the current count is longer than the largest count, then the largest count is now the current count, a simple, like trying to find the largest number kind of thing. And if so, the largest start is now, at this thing where it's just like, okay, the current index I'm on, but I gotta have to go back then however many digits I'm currently on +1. So it's a little wonky here. This +1's a little unintuitive, but it's kind of the way splice works down here. But anyway, it kind of mention it here. And then if it's not a 0, then we want to reset the count. And that's where this kind of comes in, because if it's a 1, hey, the current count's obviously back to 0. And then once you kind of go through this, you get, at the end, these are all populated. And so now you basically have a longest count, largest start, and current count. And now you do this weird thing. And again, this is I'm not proud, but this is when you're stressed. I was sweating, and I was like, I gotta solve this. This is kind of what I could come up with, which is to say, let's convert it to an array. An array has this thing called splice, and it allows you to kind of like do what we want to do, which is given a starting index, and for a certain number of characters, replace it with this. And or starting index, I think this is called delete, like how many you want to delete, and then whatever you want to do. And this is a little funky here, but basically that converts that array of 1s and 0s into, it replaces that with the hashes. And at the very end, we just want to join it back to make it a single string. And so this is one of probably 50 approaches, but this has some wonky stuff in it. But that just to kind of give you a sense of like, pretty is not the goal. It's, hey, it kind of works. And, if you were to come back and say, what are some things you could improve? I could probably give you like 10 right now. But that's just to kind of give you an idea of like a potential solution. Just to kind of get you thinking for next time. That's some stuff. Any thoughts or questions on this before we kind of land the plane?
I like your frame of mind, man. I really appreciate the way both two things, kind of like what you were giving me for that quick feedback. It was just how you articulate the walkthrough of your code, your logic actually. And one thing I kind of forgot to do, or I did it in my own way, was the notes within the code. That kind of helps walk through whatever step you're in and whichever line you are in. And a little highlight for myself that I might take from you now is line 44 and 45, just for the sake of, articulating it through code-wise, seeing the inputs and outputs. I like that a lot. Populating, what else can I say? Man, I totally thought line 15 in my head, just never got the time or figuring where to put that conditional. It's kind of cool to see how close I was at, and also recognize where was my my branch of overthinking came into play.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and this goes for any of these algorithm things, is sometimes you could be 99% there, and like that 1%'s never going to happen in the interview. It's too stressful of a situation to bridge that gap. But one of the things I did really appreciate is I could see your logic and the clarity of your thinking. And so it was one of those, you're like, okay, a clear thinking person who's in the wrong place can get to the right place. But the person who's thinking is very clouded, even if they're right next door to it, may not get there. So I felt like your clarity of thinking was good and you weren't stressed out and those kind of things. At least it didn't seem like you were like losing your mind. And so that was really good. So this is just one of those that, like, you know, there's probably a couple of key things, you know, if you just did a bunch of algorithms, you just kind of get more intuitive with, but like, you know, okay, like here's things if I saw, and again, this is not like the Justin show or anything like this. If I saw you do these things, I'd be like, oh, that's like cool, because I do them, but also just because you usually don't see juniors or mids do this. Is something like this is like, it's kind of exotic. So I'm not saying learn this, but like seeing the little things a little bit exotic definitely can give you a little bit of stage presence, because it's just like, wow, okay, that's a little exotic. Doing you know, I like the plus, you know, that's just a preference. That's not neither here nor there. I think knowing this pattern and just kind of being able to pump it out, I think is good. I think you would have got there anyway. What is something else? I think, yeah, like some of these, again, these are a little bit, Splice is a little exotic. I say a little exotic, like probably most people have heard of it, but like knowing about it definitely gives you some brownie points, those kind of things. And I think, yeah, I think everything else in here is like you already showed that you could do. So again, this is all kind of a moot point because you definitely showed yourself capable and competent. So all in, I would definitely say you're a hire to strong hire, somewhere in the middle there. We talked about things that would make you a strong hire, and I'm sure you'll pick those up in no time. And yeah, there probably would be some people who are hardcore about the algorithms. It's like, I want you to get it in the 20 minutes. But I think now that you're kind of familiar with it, and you're going to put in the reps, you would definitely be able to get this sorted out. And I have no doubt that given a React project, like most interviews would pull up a React project, say, do ABC, you would be fine. Like loop through this, you know, map through this, and you'd be like, oh yeah, do. So, yeah. So congrats on that, and thanks for doing the interview.
The last thing you mentioned, and now I see that, hey, let's kick it out. Let's make another mock interview for myself, or with my friends, or with you, and see how it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be great to kind of before and after, like just to kind of see, okay, you know how my style is, the kind of interview I like to lead out and kind of focus on the few things I mentioned. And I think you'll be right where you need to be, and you already are there. So yeah, so I appreciate it. I'll see you on the other side, but I appreciate you jumping in and jumping on the call.
Yeah, man. Take care.
Awesome.
See ya.
Bye.